agenda throughout the year, and then we're putting it out, so because you couldn't really do it as an entire piece of legislation.
Right,
but we're taking like Deaf-Free College and the various proposals, and then they're gonna come out that way.
Right.
So yeah,
Well,
we're just a little more than we've done in the past. It's always just been a document that comes out at one time of the year.
Right.
And then this will make sure it's alive throughout the year.
Right. Well, you know, we all consider you a genius, so we were like, we weren't quite sure how it was going to work.
Yeah,
But it was like, if it's possible, Representative Pocan will figure it out.
Just in pieces, we're gonna do it, and that way we'll be able to take some of the stronger measures that are in it and actually introduce them as standalone.
Okay, great. All right, well, we understand that you have got a lot of meetings, so, I'm gonna bring Carissa from Daily Post Town. We did a joint mega petition. There were 20 organizations that participated. We got over 168,000 signatures, but people got a little wild and crazy. People liked it so much, they signed 3 and 4 times. So let me do, I will let Carissa give that information.
We ended up with almost 96,000 petition signatures in support of the people's budget.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
And that's on behalf of a large list of organizations, Daily Coast just being one of them, American Family Voices, American Federation of Teachers, Americans for Fair Taxes Education Fund, Campaign for America's Future, Commonomics USA, Crooks and Liars, Daily Coast, Deluge, EPI Policy Center, Environmental Action, Friends of the Earth, Massachusetts Peace Action, National People's Action, People Demanding Action, People for the American Way, Progressive Congress, Silver Linings Action, Social Security Works, USA Action, US Labor Against the War, Watchdog.net, and Win Without War. So you have some champions that are definitely dedicated to seeing this through.
We're just hoping that we get a chance to vote. This could be one of the first years we haven't had a chance to vote for it on the floor because the Republicans can't agree with the Republicans.
They can't agree with themselves.
Yeah, so it's kind of an odd makeup. So thank you very much for doing that. Thanks for helping us, get the word out there.
And we are going to keep on helping. We're going to be hosting town halls. We're going to be doing more webinars where we're training people on the people's budget. We had about 15 articles written about the people's budget between February 28th and March 31st. We've turned those articles into flyers that people are going to be able to download because we've got people that want to take it and table with the people's budget.
Gotcha.
I'm going to take it to the People's Summit in June. So this really is going to develop, or has developed, into a full-fledged campaign that many organizations are going to keep working on year-round. So thank you for all your work.
Sure, and we'll try to keep you all informed as we start putting pieces of it out. Some are already out as pieces of legislation, but if we add some new ones that have come directly out of the budget, we'll let you notice, because that way we can keep the word out on those.
Right, and then we will do whatever we need to do in terms of advocacy, letting people know. We'll get articles placed, we'll get petitions out, advocacy alerts, whatever it is that you need. If you need us to make phone calls, oh, that's really painful for our organization, but what the heck, we'll do it.
All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone's.
All right. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Oh, we will.
Yeah,
we will.
I mean, the situation in Flint is still really bad, and I think it needs a lot more attention. And I know the governor's trying to make it seem like he's taking care of it with his 75-point plan and many other things. But for people on the ground, they still can't drink their water. There's still high levels of lead in the drinking water. The digging up of pipes is going very slowly. There are serious concerns that residents have because they're experiencing kind of ongoing rashes and other things that it's not actually safe to bathe in the water. And so I think it's kind of past the typical media cycle for the most part, though I'm sure that these criminal charges will bring media attention back to it. But the situation there is still really dire. And we're continuing to push to try to get, more attention and really to get more funding in, and I think there's a lack of leadership, and that the federal government needs to take a more proactive role in Flint.
Right. I mean, when 102,000 people are poisoned,
it's kind of beyond just the local area, you know, it's not a few people in an apartment building, it's an entire city.
And so we've also tried to, I think there's been a lot of other news stories about problems with lead across the country. And it's not just lead, I mean, what we've seen and what we've been calling for, we had our 10-year anniversary for the entire 10 years we've been working with Clean Water Watch, and I've been there, is for a major federal investment in our drinking water and sewer infrastructure. And we've just completely allowed budgets after budgets to be cut back, and we're allowing these really aging that are much in need of upgrade and repair just becomes completely dilapidated. And so we're working very closely with Andrea and other allies to try to get legislation, and we're hopeful that we're going to get some that will actually increase and establish a dedicated fund that is not subject to congressional appropriations, because that's what we've seen. And basically, the amount of funding that we've devoted to our water and sewer infrastructure in real dollars peaked in 1977 and has just been declining ever since then. So we've seen a 74% decrease in 2014 dollars from 1977 till now in terms of how much we are investing in our infrastructure. And so, yeah, so that's been a real big focus of ours, and we're hopeful, like I said, that something's going to move forward.
Okay, well, and we will work with you and support everything that we can to get that legislation.
How much more are you going to focus on this, given that Flint is just one of thousands of cities that have the same issue, which of course means it's a mega social, environmental, and justice issue? Are you going to be dedicating more time and effort, and also are you finding that you're getting some support to get into this? So I know Dr. Ferguson, this is something I'm sure would be very much up her alley, and of course we're very interested in this too. It's social justice, it's environmental, it's a job creation program too, if you look at that regard. So are you going to be taking this on as a bigger part of your general agenda, or?
You know, we've been working to try to get a dedicated fund for years. You all know the climate in Congress has been very unfavorable to major spending bills, right?
It's been very unfavorable to everything.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, the severity of the situation in Flint, which was unique in certain ways, and that they changed the water source under an emergency manager explicitly to save money to a source that was knowingly corrosive. You know, I think there are issues across the country, but I do think the situation in Flint was very specific social context too, which is why there's been a lot of attention drawn to it. But yeah, there's been a lot of interest in Congress now to do do about this. So,
right.
It's kind of, sometimes that's how campaigns work, right?
But are you as an organization going to take this on, or are you just going to wait and see what?
Yeah, we believe we will have a bill soon, is what I hope.
Yes.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood, all of that.
Right, and I know the people's budget did contain a very specific appropriation purely for Flint. So it was a $1.1 trillion infrastructure bill, and I believe 761 million was earmarked for Flint.
But didn't they just take that out of the legislation, was the energy legislation?
Yes,
Keep
they
that
did
in-house
remove
for
it.
that.
Yeah.
So
But
is there a backup for that?
They claim they're going to find another way to attach it to something. I mean, that's what I've read in the news. I don't know any insight.
right, it is, yeah, we know it happened, gee, we feel really bad for the people, but are we going to appropriate any money to fix it? Right, and that's kind of where they are. Yeah, so government at the finest government that money can buy for other people, not us.
You have to literally replace almost the entire plumbing system. That's $300 million easy, let alone all the health and other issues.
Right. Well, again, that's why we're really going to be pushing for Medicare for all. Going to be lifelong. These are not, and in a couple of months, they'll be able to fix them. So right now, they've done Medicaid, but they severely limited it. It was only for people under the age of 21 and pregnant women. So that sort of leaves a lot of the population not covered. And again, as any reasonable human being will tell you, issues with lead do not suddenly disappear because you reach the age of 21. So all my prior lead poisoning is just gone. I'm 21, it's gone now, life is wonderful. It doesn't work like that. So again, the congressional bubble.
Alcohol consumption doesn't cancel out lead.
Unfortunately, no.
That's a shame.
Cannabis helps though. I'm sure it does.
And again, there's all types of mitigating possibilities with cannabis. So yes, we are going to be talking about that. Stephen.
Yeah, I don't know if I came in late because I didn't know where the room was.
Oh,
And they gave the wrong room number at the other place.
And I specifically went down there and gave them the room number.
And they gave the wrong room number.
Oh.
Anyway,
Cannon building, it's a frat house.
yeah, anyway, have you seen, you made reference to the John Oliver piece?
Oh, on lead?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really excellent.
Yeah.
It, you know, was in depth, and it talked
He's
about the appropriations being diminishing over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really good. I mean, maybe that piece, I don't know how you get John Oliver, you know, how you get that on video to spread around, but that was a nice, maybe
It's, yeah, it's
5-minute
online.
piece or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we've
Yep.
shared it out on Facebook. I
Okay.
actually, yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, but my colleagues watched it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really good,
It's
and you know, how he does it with seriousness combined with humor.
Humor.
Right.
particularly effective.
Incredible facts, only totally deadpan delivery.
Yeah,
And then you're like, whoa, wait a minute, did he just say what I thought he said?
right.
But it was supposed to almost be funny.
Well, it's funny, you know, funny if it wasn't so
Or
Awful.
ridiculous, you know.
Right.
Any new news on what's happening in Baltimore with the privatization of water there?
I don't think that there's any movement on the privatization. I know there was Veolia was involved with a specific kind of contract, but they weren't gonna like fully take over the system, so. But we're working to try to push an affordability ordinance there, because there were a lot of issues with people having their water actually shut off in Baltimore because of their inability to pay last year. I don't know if you remember that, but that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a serious issue, and
Right.
so, we're
And
trying to
here
pass these
is-
ordinances that basically will make it really difficult to shut off water to a lot of the most vulnerable populations in particular, but also based on affordability indexes about like how much people can actually afford. You know, the UN has established an amount that people, it's 3% of your income that should be, you know, charged for water basically, and if it exceeds that, then, you know, that also would not be kosher or whatever, and so, you know, that's not considered in a lot of these cases, and people's water is just being shut off, which can cause major public health
Right.
emergencies.
Right, which we all very definitely learned with the Detroit water
Yes,
shut off.
exactly.
So, We the People of Detroit folks, they did some work with the people of Flint, and they are working on rolling out a community action plan where communities will be able to model a good deal of what they did in order to fight back. So we're working with them to see if we can help spread it through the webinars that we do, since we've got international reach if we do webinars. So really interested in following that campaign very closely, and then looking at empowering communities while those of us that are on the Hill fight to get some money released from appropriations somewhere. So again, we are going to go into fiscal year 2017 with no budget, just appropriations. So that's going to be a pretty amazing experience in and of itself.
They're not gonna do a budget at all?
No. Paul Ryan's running for president. Since he's running for president, The Republicans voted down his budget. Paul Ryan's budget this year, when they did the trial balloon, got less votes than the people's budget. It wasn't awful enough. There weren't
Yeah,
enough
he's too
people.
left-wing for that.
There weren't enough people that were being tortured and being totally left out of America with Paul Ryan's budget. It's like, wait a minute, poor people are still able to survive in this country. This is horrible. It's not bad enough. So we've got to make it worse. So Paul Ryan basically decided, to heck with the whole budget thing. We'll just do appropriations. You know, who needs a budget? We'll just spend money. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. So when Representative Pocan was here, that's why he said what they're going to have to do is take elements of the people's budget and then attempt to insert them when some of these appropriation bills come up. The one thing that I hate about appropriations is appropriation bills can be brought suddenly to the floor where we get almost no warning as organizations. And we will literally be turning on 5 minutes notice trying to fight an appropriation. So it's going to be an interesting year. So like I said, the best government that money can buy for somebody else, not us. All right. Linda, Social Security.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me back here. I'm glad that I was able to make it this month because last month I was supposed to come and the Metro decided to shut down.
Oh, yeah. Right,
yeah, so
right,
thank
right.
you. I believe you gave the update for us then. But so this month we got some pretty good news in the world of Social Security quite recently, actually from the Department of Education, which announced that they're going to forgive the student loan debts of nearly 400,000 Social Security disability beneficiaries. And that was pretty exciting news for us because we are one of the leaders of a national coalition calling on the federal government to stop all garnishment of Social Security benefits for student loan debt because all like regular private debts, Social Security can't be garnished for those, and it used to be that that was the case for federal student loan debt too. That got changed, it shouldn't have been, so this was a very good first step from the Department of Education, and we're going to keep fighting until all Social Security benefits are exempt from that ridiculous garnishment. Also this month, GAO released a report which was requested by Senator Sanders, and it was the latest of many studies that show a growing life expectancy gap between the wealthy and everybody else. So what that means is basically when Paul Ryan and his friends say, oh, we need to raise the retirement age because everyone's living longer. What they really mean is the rich are living longer, so everyone else needs to work forever. And I mean, that's not new news to us, of course, but it's great to have both this GAO report and several new studies really hammering home the point, and we're definitely going to be talking about that a lot. And in terms of recent action here in Congress, or lack thereof, as we've said a few times already, it doesn't seem like House Republicans are going to be releasing a budget, but before they got to that point, it did go far enough to be marked up in committee, and there were a few interesting votes there. Democrats on the Budget Committee offered 2 Social Security amendments during markup, and one was to prevent cuts to Social Security now or in the future, and the other one was to expand benefits. And in both cases, they were party line votes. Every Democrat on the committee who voted was in favor, and all the Republicans were against. So that obviously shows how much the conversation has shifted within the Democratic Party. It's really expansion and absolutely no cuts are very much the mainstream position within the party. It's a strong consensus, and thank you so much, to all the people around this table and all the PDA members around the country who've been a huge part of making that happen.
That's a long way from Bold Simpson.
Oh yeah.
I have a question about the Social Security debate that was in the Brooklyn Hillary Bernie thing last Thursday.
Okay, I'll say...
Did you watch that?
I did. I'll say before anything else that Social Security Works is, a nonprofit organization. We don't endorse that.
Well, no, I understand that. I'm not talking about endorsements.
Okay.
I'm talking about, Bernie said lift the cap. Hillary said, oh, there are various ways you can do that. And what I'm really curious about it is you know, trying to get the Democratic Party to say you have to lift the cap. Because any other way, you might want to do other things. But, you know, if you ignore lifting the cap, how are you going to raise the money?
Well, we support lifting the cap. We very much encourage folks to get on board with that. But I mean, it is also true. There's other things that we support, you know, equally strongly, including
In lieu of lifting the cap?
not in lieu of, in
Well,
addition
that's
to.
the point, yeah.
In addition
Right.
to.
Right,
So
right.
that includes, you know, unearned investment income should absolutely
No, I get it, but I mean, the point that I'm trying to make is unless you include that not as an option, but as a
The base,
necessary but
as the
not
base.
sufficient condition, how are you going to raise the revenues that you would need?
I mean, our position is what we're looking for folks to say is that they support expanding Social Security
Right.
and paying for it by making the wealthiest millionaires and billionaires
Right,
pay
right.
their fair share.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah.
Somebody said that.
Yeah.
Who were the Democratic legislators that introduced the support for Social Security?
So that's actually, it's kind of interesting because the one to prevent cuts now or in the future was actually introduced by Representative Van Hollen. And I believe the expansion one was Representative Pascal.
Okay, yes, very
So,
nice.
speaking of, we also had some further good news, which is 3 new House members recently signed on to the Schakowsky resolution in support of expanding Social Security benefits, and that's Representatives Norcross and Pascal from New Jersey and Tim Ryan from Ohio, and that's HRES 393, and this is mostly to the folks out around the country. If your member of Congress isn't on it, they need to hear from you.
How many have on that now?
Don't have the number off the top of my head.
Which
but,
ones?
It's over 100 for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
well over.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have something like over 75% of the House Democratic Caucus is either on that or they've come out in favor of expansion in one of the other ways, like the whole CPC is in favor.
And 0 Republicans.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's why the next
Yes.
step is.
Most legislation, I know, big shock.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
very smart.
Yeah, and I mean, because of that, the next step is to elect more members of Congress who support expanding, never cutting Social Security. And I mean, part of that's about the primaries, but a lot of it is about getting Republicans out of office. So even though we don't endorse candidates, we absolutely can, and we do educate voters on candidates' positions. So to that effect, we've been creating fact sheets highlighting the Senate records of vulnerable Senate Republicans. So please be in touch if you want one for your state, and any that we don't have, we're very happy to make.
Okay.
And then we're also very strongly encouraging Democrats running for Congress to come out in support of expansion, because that's the way that you really make the contrast clear. And we're very appreciative of PDA members' help with that goal. So that's what I've got for this month, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
All right, well, I mean, it's great, we've got a nice small group around the table, we can get the questions in as we reach them. How you doing, Cologne?
I'm gonna give you a thumbs up, Miss.
Oh, all right, okay, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna give Cologne just a moment. Now, should I have Dr. Fairchild move over between Emily and...
I got a wide shot for everybody in the room.
Oh, okay, all right, lovely. Okay, Helen.
I was trying to hide since I'm typing.
You're in the shot.
Multitasking.
Well, it would look to, 20th century if you didn't have anybody on it.
I put my headphones on, it looks more ridiculous.
It works because you are one of our younger people at the table, so everybody is going to go, oh, well, she's doing that because she's younger.
Look how young she is.
Right.
That's why I do this, to look younger.
Oh, no, there's, right, I was thinking, hang microphones around my neck. I've been missing out. Well, what I'll do while we're getting ready for the live stream is, I've got a lot of new people around the table. We at PDA, People Demanding Action, every month for the past 3 years, we deliver a letter both on Capitol Hill and also out in the district asking members of Congress and members of the Senate to support or oppose specific pieces of legislation. a lot of things were going on this week, or last week. On the 16th, it was Emancipation Day for the city of Washington, D.C. So in our letter, we are asking members of Congress to support making D.C. the 50th state. So we're asking 51st state. So we're asking people to support the new Columbia Admissions Act. And we basically let people know there are 785,000 residents of the city of D.C. And what this bill would basically do is the federal enclave, all federal buildings and federal parks would basically become Washington, D.C. Where people live, that would become the state of New Columbia. So we've gotten, there were 126 people on the House bill the last time I looked, and I believe they had 18 senators. So we need to push our Virginia senators to support the legislation because there's a huge giveaway from Maryland and Virginia. D.C. ceded, or New Columbia ceded, the bridges and the roadways to Washington, D.C. So again, I obviously wasn't in on that conversation because I would be holding them for ransom. What do we get in exchange? Otherwise, picture a toll booth on everything that we can put a toll booth on. So as I said, they didn't consult me. One of the other bills that we're working on is, of course, the people's budget, and we did deliver the 94,643 signatures to Representative Pocan on the people's budget. We are again asking our members to vote no on the Trans-Pacific Partnership when the President brings that bill, because it would do a lot of horrible things for us. We are also asking members to support the Voting Rights Advancement Act, where we really and truly do need to be able to restore Section 4, the pre-clearance formula, so that what happened in Arizona and New York and will continue to happen in California and many other states, what Virginia will no longer happen. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize about the VRAA is it subjects all 50 states to pre-clearance in the event they do certain things like suddenly shut down half their polling places. So states that were never subject to pre-clearance, it is now based not totally on your geography and your voter suppression history, but it is based upon your current actions. So that states like Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, that have newly become very red, would now no longer be able to just on a whim suppress the vote. And then finally, the bill that a number of our board members were privileged to work on, the Zero Climate Emissions Resolution, currently has 42 co-sponsors. We are specifically speaking to members of SEEP, the Sustainable Energy Environmental Committee, to please support this bill. So that is what is in our letter this month. All right, we have a new guest for our roundtable today. This is Dr. Denise Fairchild of the Emerald Cities Collaborative. And the Emerald Cities Collaborative is a climate justice organization. And I'm going to not steal any of Dr. Fairchild's thunder, I'm going to let Dr. Fairchild speak for herself and her organization. Welcome, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me in, finally getting here.
And you're going to meet some really nice people.
Oh, great, great. Well, let me pass this around. This is my nightmare and my dream.
Oh.
This is what I dream about every night and work on every day, which is how do we build a what we call a high road economy? How do we go from a low road extractive economy to a high road sustainable and just economy. And this is the work of Emerald Cities in both dismantling the low road, right, and building an alternative high road Emerald Cities. There are a number of elements that are a part of this, and for us it's really about, some people call it the triple bottom line. It's about how do we green our cities and make them more sustainable, make them more resilient. How do we move into a zero fossil fuel economy, create a net positive environment. But at the same time, while we invest in this new infrastructure that has to be built, this new energy infrastructure and everything else that has to be rebuilt because it's been corroded, contaminated, corrupted one way or another, that investment is in trillions of dollars of opportunity. And so how do we create that investment to create good family wage jobs and business opportunities? How do we use this opportunity to re-engineer, rebuild America to also rebuild the middle class, right? And then lastly, as we build this new green economy, this new green sector, how do we ensure that low-income communities of color that have been marginalized and been peripheral to the mainstream economy get to be major players, actors, and beneficiaries of this new high road economy? So that's the work that we do, and you will see from this Radical's roadmap to the high road, some of the policy issues that need to be thought about, some of it at the federal level, some of it at the local level. I mean, what does it mean to decarbonize the economy, right? And that is everything that has to do with where transportation dollars go and how much of that 8% is still disproportionately going into roads, right, as opposed to going into transportation. What does it take to decarbonize, and this is what I'll talk about mostly today, the building sector, right, which uses 70% of all electricity comes from, the lights and the HVAC systems and all the stuff that goes into buildings, how we build it as well as how we use buildings. And then how do you decarbonize the power sector? They're sort of, we've got some ideas about what the problems are, what the solutions might be, and some of them are pretty, way out there on the limb, but because you guys are who you are, demand action, on the limb kind of folks, I figured that this might be useful for you. So I'm not sure exactly what you want me to stress, but, one of the things I believe we'll just recognize the fact that 2 days we're facing celebrating Earth Day, right? Almost half a century ago, 46 years ago, was the very first Earth Day, 1970. And at that time, it's a very different political environment, right? We had Earth Day, within the sort of course of a year of Earth Day, we passed legislation to start the Environmental Protection Agency, right? We got the Clean Air Act passed. We got the Clean Water Act passed. We got the Endangered Species Act passed. We had this with bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats came across the aisles and thought this was all a good idea. We had, individuals like the rich and the poor, the tycoons and the, labor unions all recognizing this is in the best interest of humanity in our civilization to do this kind of thing, to protect the environment. In 1994, even, we got an executive order, it was 12898, which actually recognized that besides, hugging trees and caring about whales, that, people mattered as well, and particularly low-income communities of color. And so the executive order 1298 under Clinton really was about federal action, taking federal action to promote environmental justice and making sure that whatever laws are passed, that it does not negatively, disproportionately impact low-income communities and communities of color. So 50 years later, right, hindsight, let's look at where we are today versus where we started with Earth Day. We are worse off today than we were, right, 50 years ago. We can't breathe. We can't breathe. you know, the whole fossil fuel economy is killing our environment, but it's killing each and every one of us. You know, we have gone past the point where, you know, the chemicals in our atmospheres, does anybody remember, you know, where's the proportion of carbon, acceptable level of carbon in the atmosphere?
CO2.
CO2, yeah. What's the percent, you know?
I can't remember the exact, it's
350.
Yeah,
Yeah, 350 or more.
right.
You know, we're at 400 plus, and you're
Yeah.
rolling.
409.
Is it 409?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the projection is that, you know, no matter what the rules are in place, that we're still burning so much junk, you know, that it's destroying our ecosystem. Our entire ecology is falling apart. And what does that mean? It means fundamentally our food supply system, you know, they talk about what 30% of all the coral reefs around the world are pretty much dead without an ability to revive them. You know, coral reefs is the beginning of the whole food supply chain, right? We have drought, right? And the water and the globe, the warming of the globe, which is, you know, melting our ice caps and causing, you know, extreme weather conditions, heat, including tornadoes and everything else. So all these life and death kinds of situations, besides our ability to subsist, all as a result of what we're doing to the environment and the greenhouse gas emissions that are taking place. Now, all of that's happening, and what's even worse is that whatever those challenges are to, you know, to our health, to environment, to our climate, impacts low-income communities of color even worse, right? And as much as we have had to really, you know, get, you know, Executive Order 12898 passed, we're still, again, no better off than where we were. My first environmental justice struggle was in South Los Angeles. That was in 1984, 1985. It was about a 2.5-year battle to stop a municipal incinerator that was planned for South LA, where I lived, where I worked, raised my 2 boys. That was being planned, spitting distance away from our homes, spitting distance away from our schools, right? And this was an incinerator that was being proposed at a time when we were not recycling. So they were going to burn plastic, paint, you know, whatever we were going to throw in the garbage, when we were throwing in the garbage, was going to, you know, be emitted in this low-income community of color. The good news was that we band together, you know, with the West Side and with the Valley, you know, and with the rich and the poor and the white and everybody else to say, okay, we're getting it first, but you're next, okay? And it scared them enough because there were going to be 5 that were going to be cited, but it was coming to South LA first. But fortunately, you know, we got UCLA, and we got the West Side lawyers, and we got everybody involved to sort of fight this environmental injustice to this community, because, again, it was coming to the neck. But do you know, that was 1984 that we were fighting that. And I just read in Monday's paper about a woman in Baltimore.
Yep.
20-year-old woman.
So she was 17 when she started in high school. That was still fighting, and instead of Baltimore, which has the highest, you know, pollution in the country, right? That was actually having to fight in this school center. I say, sister, I should have won that battle for you. You should have not been in this battle and continued to fight these environmental justice challenges, but we're still fighting it.
And you know what's horrible about that? In Maryland, burning municipal waste is considered a Tier 1 renewable energy source.
Yeah,
So the
right.
state renewable
Yeah.
portfolio standard allows burning poultry manure from factory poultry farms, but also burning municipal waste, which we know is all in these
Well,
low-income communities.
what's interesting about this is sort of a kind of a funny story, but not so funny. So 20 years after our Lancer fight, the city of LA still has a landfill challenge, right? And so they're still trying to figure out what to do, because nobody wants landfills either, and we're still consuming lots of stuff, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. So they're, you know, they put back on the table this idea that they're going to burn garbage. And so the developers of the project knew that there was this coalition of radical black women, basically, who were having none of it, right? And so they said, well, the technology has substantially changed since 1985, and we want to come to Germany with us. And so we can show you what this new technology is. So they put us all on a plane. We all went to Hamburg.
Why not?
All right, why not? We saw them burning all this garbage and stuff, and we saw all these machines and needles moving and emission standards and calibrators and I don't know what I was looking at, right? But it was. I said, well, you know what? This is really, really impressive. I really think this is a really good thing. But I'll tell you what. You get this sited in West Los Angeles first, then we'll buy into it. So, I don't know what I'm looking at, but you start over there, and if they say okay, we'll take it, because we know they have the environmental lawyers, and they have all of the resources, the researchers, and everyone else to figure this out for us. So, that's what they're saying, because this was, recycling garbage and creating energy and putting down asphalt. I mean, all this. Multiple use of this garbage. Hey, who knows? Like I said, put it someplace else where people can really analyze it, and then bring it to me. But in any case, all this is to say that we're still, the political environment is challenged, is worse than it has been before. The environmental conditions are worse than it has ever been before. Our ability to even survive has never been. I mean, we're at an existential crisis in terms of what we will be able to be, in the future. Whether we have food and how much food is going to cost, whether we have water, whether it's going to be clean, and how much it's going to be able to have to pay for it, and how we're going to privatize it. All these things, and then the environmental justice work is still ongoing. So one of the things that I'm just going to emphasize and talk about a little bit, and then we can open it up for questions, is the Clean Power Plan. Right, so you're familiar with the Clean Power Plan. So we've not been able to get an environmental or energy policy passed ever, ever, an energy policy, right? So the best thing, and we thought 2010 we were going to be able to, pass an energy policy. It looked like it was going forward. It was like going through all the committee work, and it just died. It died because of a divided environmental community. So many other reasons. So the best thing that we have come up with through this administration is the Clean Power Plan, which is basically using the Clean Air Act, Section 111D, that's what they called it, 111D, that basically says, it's law. It's a law that you have to have clean air. And by God, many of you states have carbon emissions that are just absolutely unacceptable and is violating the law. And you need, every state by state, you need to figure it out. You need to have a plan to lower your carbon emissions. We're not telling you how to do it. We're not telling you to, shut down your coal plants. But bottom line, y'all need to figure it out. So the Clean Power Plan is our energy policy. It is the, the beginning of trying to address the fact that we are at 409 parts per billion, and America specifically, we emit more carbon. We're 5% of the population, as this thing shows you, and we are emitting 25% of all the greenhouse gas. So we are the biggest criminal in this case, right? Because we're doing this not only to ourselves, but to the rest of the world. So this is our beginning of trying to fix that. So the Clean Power Plan has gone through, well, let me best analogize it to health reform. Where we are with the Clean Power Plan is where we were, 3-4 years ago with health reform. It is radical. It is we're being sued. It's held up in the courts. So we went through these directives. Now there's some real issues. There's some real environmental justice issues with the Clean Power Plan, and I'll talk about that. But it is something, and what that something is now is being shut down. It is being, district attorneys in most of the conservative states have decided that it was illegal, and that EPA has overreached its authority with this Clean Power Plan, and it went to, the Supreme Court. And while Scalia was alive, right? It looked like it was actually gonna go down by 4. Poor fellow, you know.
Yeah, we
Some
miss you.
people-
She says with a smile on her face.
Somebody suggests some, you know, some conspiracy, I don't know, whatever. So now it's gone back to district courts, in district, DC district courts. And they're going to be examining whether, what was quite unusual about this is that they put a stay on the directive without actually even hearing the arguments. You know, usually you hear some arguments before you basically say, let's review this. So that it's, you know, no state can go forward, because if a state did not put a clean power plan, a carbon reduction plan together, it was going to get the federal plan. The federal plan was going to plan it for them. So everybody was going to be mandated to do this, so that no one now, everything is sort of idling until this judicial agenda is sorted out. Now, if the appellate court here decides that it's doable, that it is not overstepping bounds, it will go back to a divided court, 4-4. And if it goes back to a divided court, we win. Okay, because the appellate court holds in the contest of an evenly divided court. Now, somebody, you know, so anyway, all that's to say, our best shot at looking at the Clean Power Plan is a stay. But even if it passes, right, the EJ community, the climate justice community, we have some real concerns about how the Clean Power Plan is constituted. And we've been struggling with it, and we actually don't have an answer. We have an answer to it, we just don't know that we can fix the plan at this point in time. What is the challenge? Well, the challenge is climate, environmental injustice. There are many communities we call hotspots around the United States that are majorly impacted by pollution. So if you know Richmond, California, as an example, if you've ever been there, we've had community meetings so that we just sit and look at Chevron and this constant pollution that's just constantly emitting, that's impacting the health and well-being of all the residents in Richmond. We're basically saying that what the Clean Power Plan does, it has baked into it, not overtly, but it's baked into it a cap and trade, which says that you can either reduce pollution or you can pay to pollute. And my climate justice community was saying, and you know, and the argument from the environmental community, mind you, is that, you know, just an overall reduction will be a good thing, right? At one level, while we're saying, well, we want some real specific interventions for communities of color that are already 40% of asthma cases, or, you know, our kids are going for respiratory challenges and hospitals of health and cancer, all those things. We want, if you're going to have cap and trade, I call it, I want a fair trade cap and trade. I want a cap and trade which says, Chevron, you don't get an exemption. Chevron, because you are polluting, you know, communities of color with disproportionate impacts on health and well-being, you don't get an exemption, you don't get to write the check. You must reduce the source of your carbon emissions. We don't have that, we don't think we have that capacity to do that, but if we do, it's going to be state level battles. Our battles are now at the state level, and potentially at the regional level. It's easier to battle this at the state level because we have state coalitions, we have community groups that are operating within the states, you know, that can fight this battle. But now they're talking about this being called mass-based methods where, you know, pollution is regional, it doesn't have boundaries. And so regional coalitions of states, so RGGI as an example, which is what, New York and Connecticut and Jersey, and, you know, they've got this coalition and they're trading with each other. Our ability to fight across a regional landscape as a community is so much more a challenge. Nobody's paying us to, you know, to be frontline, you know, guerrillas in this warfare at the local and state level, much less trying to figure out this stuff regionally. So that's our real struggle. You know, there's some elements of this. You know, in our own community, we struggle with the different levels of complexity. So on the one level, lowering emission overall will help everybody, even though we don't get any particular attention. And California has a model, it's probably the greatest redistribution of wealth ever, where the SB 535 coalition, where we have in California a cap and trade program, or cap and dividend program, which says that, okay, if you pollute, you pay into a community fund. It's going to be about $1 billion this year. It's projected to be up to $5 billion over a period of time. So on the one hand, they're paying us to actually pollute, but that it's giving communities money to mitigate, transportation, and low-income energy efficiency programs, a variety of other programs, which is sort of maybe a Band-Aid to the fact that, we're going to do it, but we're going to give you some of the money back so that you can figure out how to protect your community. So there's some folks in the community, environmental justice community, climate justice community that say, well, if it's going to be lemons, let's make lemonade out of it. Let's make sure, that there is, a community, dividend that comes out of this that we can then redistribute this for community purposes. So anyway, I'm going to just stop there just to suggest that's some of what's going on in the clean energy space and see if there are any questions.
Carissa.
The cap and trade, like there's data behind the cap and trade almost always disproportionately affects these hotspots you're speaking of.
I'll say that again.
The cap and trade.
Well, the cap and trade is, it doesn't, what we want to say is that communities that are impacted most by greenhouse get first and foremost fixed, right? So if we got to reduce, pollution in the community, we want those communities that are, disproportionately polluted.
The hotspots.
The hotspots. We want them fixed. And
Before
cap and
you get-
trade doesn't, it's just a sort of a generic, we're just going to reduce carbon, wherever we can.
So the idea would be you have to fix these hotspots that you've created, Chevron, before you're allowed to participate in the cap and trade program.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Or you could just have the Clean Air Act regulate emissions, right? So then it's like, as opposed to coming up with this other cap and trade pay to pollute scheme, which is basically just big industry having undue control over these regulations, right? We could just use the Clean Air Act to regulate. That's really what these environmental laws were set up to do. And so what we see now is industry, they're doing this actually with water pollution too, where they're trading. And it's the same concerns because the hotspot on the water side is often from the power plants, which are disproportionately located in low-income communities and communities of color. So it's the same situation as opposed to just regulating water pollution. So, it's a complicated thing to understand, but basically, we should just be regulating across the board because when you come up with these other mechanisms, people with the least resources to fight for their rights are the ones that end up bearing the burden of the pollution.
Yeah, so even beyond the cap and trade part, there's another market mechanism is basically just tax carbon. And so, and if you tax it at a high enough level, it's an incentive for you not to burn carbon, not to combust carbon. But some, of us in the community are just saying, no, just keep it in the ground.
Exactly.
Period. All right? We have enough
Zero
renewable,
climate.
right, we have enough renewables to power anything we want to operate. Don't even tax it.
Because the concern there is the tax will be passed on to the consumer. That's basically what you see with most taxes, right?
Yeah.
So that's what'll happen with carbon tax too.
With the right internal combustion engine, you can burn hydrogen, and then you can extract out of water. Pretty simply.
Yeah.
Stainless steel, a couple of anodes, some distilled water, you get hydrogen from your battery running into your engine, and you're running on hydrogen. You're putting water.
Well, I don't think that the issue is about the technology. We've got this stuff figured out. It's about the legacy industry.
The solutions are.
And which is sort of my other issue is that the environmental justice issue is not just about environmental justice. It's about economic justice. And it's about social justice. It's about the, concentration and accumulation of wealth, the lack of distribution of that, the unfair labor laws that are in this industry. And so it's really about our economy. And our fight, our environmental justice fight to fix climate change, we have to fix our economy.
So,
Well, Stephen's got a question, and then I'll come back to you, Lutz.
Yeah, I wanted to take it.
Oh, and take it.
Take it to another level. It's more than just the economy. I've been, I don't know if the word would be brainwashed, but I've spent Saturday, Sunday, and Monday immersed in the democracy awakening, money in politics, the Supreme Court. What it's about, what occurred to me, is that when you were reciting Earth Day in 1970 and the Clean Air and Clean Water Act, well, in 1971, Lewis Powell, then a Richmond, Virginia lawyer for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and tobacco industries and others, wrote this memo and said, hey, you corporate guys, what we got to do is we got to take over everything. We got to start putting money in politics. We got to start reading the Supreme Court. And what that has led to now is essentially climate denial.
Yes.
So until you address those more, higher level issues, you're still going to have all these people saying, oh, well, there's no problem. I mean, this is just God's plan. Right, Reverend Meteor? This is God's plan.
I wouldn't say that.
I know. What I'm saying is that human activity has nothing to do with this. The climate is changing because, the climate is changing. And this is not a coincidence. This is well funded by the fossil fuel industry.
And well planned.
And well planned.
And it's all connected, what you'll see on there. I mean, we spend over $1 trillion a year protecting the legacy industry.
Yep.
Our military, the health impacts, the climate impact, where we have $1 billion. We've had $43 billion extreme weather events within the last 4 years. And where does that come from? That's taxpayers. But all of this is driven by our military-industrial complex. Wall Street is a part of this, the lobbyists, the so dismantling the fossil fuel industry is dismantling those elements that prop it up.
when you take a population our size from an I need to an I want sociological paradigm, you turn them into consumers instead of people that live life.
They're citizens.
Right. And then they're easier to control. And then you addict them to things like, I want a better car, I want a bigger house, keep up with the Joneses, I gotta have this plant in my yard, and I gotta have this lawn and this mower. I remember reading about that. And the problem is education suffers because nobody's thinking about what life is. They're wanting that. They're not going, I need to make sure that my roof doesn't cave in. I need to make sure that the rain falls on my crops. We've technologically, we've turned a corner in the last 100 years with the carbon age. And it's given people like the gentleman you were talking about the resources to turn our population into a bunch of addicts, basically. And we don't pay attention to anything else but getting our fix. That's why people don't vote.
And let me just respond to that. Just two quick comments. One is, part of what I care about is, because I'm also about how do we green our cities and then how do we make sure we get jobs out of it, an economy, a different kind of economy out of it. And how do we, lifting up the bottom, but we also have to push down the ceiling, the McMansions and the, 2 or 3 cars and the pool and this quote unquote American dream is insane. It's death. It's a death knell for all of us. But I don't think people understand that.
Education.
And the other part of it is that you related to, we got so disconnected from the land and the facts, and then so we became consumers. If when I talk to students and I show them an electric outlet, you know, they don't know what's behind that. They don't know, you know, where the buyers are coming from, and it's coming from, whether it's coming from coal or distributions, you know, system. They don't understand that. They don't know where milk comes from. They're not producing and connected to the land. If we find a way to reconnect to the land, we'll get it. We'll get the fact that we'll. And in fact, they were saying that people in Montana, you know, who are ranchers and they, you know, no, I think what the measure was, if you have that's not a sump pump, what is it? It's
Cistern?
a cistern. If you have a cistern, you get it.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
you are close enough to the land to understand, you know, how things are connected.
Resources are valuable.
And resources are valuable. So anyway, I don't know, you know,
As a
we're an
sister
urbanizing society, you know, we're getting ready to go into Quito, Ecuador, if they recover, for UN Habitat 3, which is about urbanization, and the massive urbanization that's going across all over the world, and it's stopping unabatedly. You know, how do we repopulate or have people reimagine what this is all about when this urbanization is taking place?
Yeah.
And as everyone knows, milk comes from the grocery store.
That's right.
Yes, it comes out of a cart
We didn't know that.
right next to everything else, yeah.
All sorts of attitudes you just don't know about. So, Doctor, I've been an admirer of your organization for a number of years, primarily because you take a multidimensional approach to change. As you were alluding to earlier, you can't just fix this and not even think about all these others. So you've been you know, a wonderful organization that's done quite a bit in what you're 10, 11 cities now, so you focus. So PDAction, when we established ourselves, we were very clear about knowing that we need to bring all these pieces and help try to facilitate change by bringing these players together that normally do not work closely together. So the question I have for you is, one, what are the positive things that you're seeing after a distinguished career, which I know you have, after all this time? And then secondly, what kind of role can PDAction and our allies help with organizations like you who are literally in the community that are working on just about every issue that is on our issue? What's the good stuff that you see that's promising? And I know that the green job world is looking good, but still a little more political will pushing to get. And the other part is, how do we help work with what you've been doing, just like with Hip Hop Caucus and Food Water Watch? How do we help really amplify what's going on in the real world,
Right.
in this world?
So I would say, one, the thing that gives me the greatest sense of satisfaction is the civic infrastructure that we're building in our cities, right? We're on this is a 50-year plus mission. You know, it is not something that's going to happen overnight. And political shifts and winds blow, you know, up and down. So mayors come and go, and presidents come and go, and all. So unless you have a very solid civic infrastructure that says, hello, Mr. President, or Mr. President, or Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Sustainability Director, you don't have that civic infrastructure, then, or if you do have that, they'll be able to say, well, welcome, here's our agenda. All right, you don't have to reinvent it. You don't have to, you know, turn back the clock and start all over again. We've got it. And so that's what we've been doing, and they get a voice. You know, what's interesting is that labor, business, and community talking to each other. We're having to dismantle 100 years worth of misinformation, miscommunication, mistreatment. Our conversations are pretty hard sometimes, pretty ugly, but totally transparent and honest. And what's interesting is that people have stayed at the table, you know, and it's because they're talking outside of their lane. They're talking to people they don't normally get to talk to, you know, labor unions talking to youth, business talking to labor. It's like, and there's a level of trust there that, you know, we're going to get through this together. So, so just being able to see that we're learning each other's language, we're understanding what, you know, what's driving us, what's our, you know, interests, what our value propositions are. So it's taken us a long time to sort of get to new places with this sort of multi-stakeholder communities that we're building. And then we're pushing policies, you know, and most of our policies are being pushed at the local level. We, you know, tackle on sort of some of the national stuff, but for us, when it comes to energy and climate and the money, the regulations, the power is at the local level. So that's what's giving me hope that people actually do want to talk to each other. They really want to figure it out. What you can do is about, I think, elevating the message, elevating the narrative, helping us populate people's imagination about that there is another way of living. There's another future. I think we're afraid of letting go the car and the house and the American dream as we've been socialized into, because we don't know that it's about another way of living, a quality of life that matters, and not the stuff that you own. I don't know if you saw the Bhutan thing that was on this weekend. And, and I was actually with the young family, the happiness index. It's not about gross domestic product.
Right, so way happier than we are.
How much time do you get to spend with your family? And it's, what is your health and how much time do you get to, what kind of nature, greenery do you have in it? So, and I think people are ready for that, right? They're ready for that narrative. They're really tired of working 60-hour weeks.
Because the other hasn't worked.
It hasn't worked in their family and, and being underpaid and overworked and, underappreciated. And so we can give them a different kind of vision. And I think that's part of what we have to do is just not how we dismantle things that don't work, but how we give them a sense that we can get someplace else.
Right, show the solution.
Has anybody ever watched Star Trek?
Which one?
I'm not a Trekkie, yet.
Well,
Any of them or
the
the original?
utopian vision of our future is completely doable. It's actually cheaper than what we're doing right now. It would save us money. If we pulled out of all the empirical, bases around the world and stopped kicking everybody's ass, everybody wouldn't hate us. And then we'd all be working together. And we could change this in a couple of years, and we don't have a lot of time in this thing. I've got somebody that's studying the climate up in the Arctic Circle and down south in Antarctica. And about 15 years ago, he and I had a conversation in Alaska. And he said the amount of methane that's going to be coming out in the next 10 years is going to double in a year from when that watershed event happens. And I am really worried that that watershed is coming this year, next year.
Well, let me end on this note. Let me just say this, that the blessing of climate change and potentially the work of your group is that we need to tell people and make them realize that this is really just not just about low-income communities of color anymore. It's just not disadvantaged populations anymore. That climate is killing all of us. That the market is working for nobody. It is not even working for the 1%. All right, because they're not going to have any food or water. They can probably pay more for it. Their kids are going to be dying. It is not working for anybody. So we are, for the first time, in the same boat. And it gives us an opportunity to grow together.
So
I need to get Reb on. I mean, we are having such an incredible conversation, and I have to look twice here. We're going to stay on Earth Day. Rev Yearwood, come on up. Now, Reverend Yearwood, have you had an opportunity to meet Dr. Fairchild?
Most definitely.
All right, yeah.
Glad to be here with you.
Thank you, Doc. So good to see you. So let me start right where it left off.
You can start wherever you want to start.
With you, we know you can just talk about whatever you want.
Oh, I'm gonna talk about wherever now. I'm gonna say what needs to be said. First I want to say thank you, Andrea and PDAction, all you guys, for having me. Doc, so good to be sitting next to you. Thank you for your words. You're definitely on Clean Power Plan, and I definitely appreciate how you brought the real experience of what would happen with a carbon tax and who would hurt from that. So I guess I'll start there. So I'm not going to be so It's Earth Day coming up, and I want to discuss two things: climate justice and climate leadership. Let me say this. One of the things that we have seen recently with the amazing ascent of Senator Bernie Sanders, and I'm not endorsing because my position, because I also believe that it's not about who we endorse, but who endorses us. It's not who we're with, but who's with us. But I say that understanding how powerful policy is. I say that wearing the name of Berta Cáceres, who was a Honduran climate activist, who was assassinated. And I understand that part of the things that helped create the atmosphere in Honduras happened particularly under former Secretary Hillary Clinton. So I'm not immune to understanding how the policies created that dynamic that then led to her being in a house arrest, that then led to her being assassinated, that led to her speaking out. So glad you also mentioned Richmond, California, dealing with Chevron. Many people who are in Richmond call it Chevron. Actually, I don't really call it Chevron, Chevron. But definitely the issue. So let me just say this of where we are since we're here in the Capitol. First, I do with climate leadership. The environmental movement has to get serious about what they term climate leadership. The progressive movement has to get serious about what it means by climate leadership. For too long, progressives in particular, but also environmentalists, even those in environmental justice movement, and those who are in this framework have been just so happy to have folks acknowledge that climate change was happening, that they then in essence would allow things or people to kind of be middle of the road. So you could be a senator on one day and say that, you know, yes, climate change is happening, but then on the very next day be engaged with fossil fuel companies, coal, oil, and gas. The problem with the fossil fuel companies, to be quite clear, is that the fossil fuel companies' business plan means that it is a death sentence to not only this generation, but future generations. So if you're putting forth with a company's business plan that means you die, there's a problem with that. There is no jobs on a dead planet. There is no good living when you can't breathe, you can't drink your water. That is not what this means. So there has to be a very clear-cut line of black and white when dealing with fossil fuel companies. Their business plan means death sentence. Their business plan means that particularly poor people, poor black people, which is one of the reasons why I am here, the reason why I fight this movement, is simply because I recognize that there are folks on this Titanic, but there are folks who have access to the lifeboats. And there's some folks who don't have access to the lifeboats or on the bottom of the boat who will die as the ship sinks. So my situation, because I live on the bottom of the boat, I need to make sure that we have the best voice on this boat possible, particularly for poor people and people of color. So understand that my sense is that while I am an environmentalist, I am a person who's in climate justice, I'm fighting particularly for poor black people and black people who look like me, who will be the first who are drowning right now in Houston, who are drinking bad water in Flint, who are still reeling from Katrina, who are still dealing with Sandy. So because folk who look like me, regardless, not Sierra Club, not NRDC, not LCV, because folk who look like me are first and worst hit by environmental catastrophes and climate emergencies. That is why I'm sitting here fighting this issue to my last breath for not only this issue, but the next. I just wanted to just kind of get that kind of a table so you can see where I'm coming from. And hopefully no offense is taken by my passion to make sure that I'm clear on fighting for my people. So climate leadership is a problem. It's a problem because politicians here on Capitol Hill, on the Senate side and on the House side, and even in the White House, continually can put forth an issue, such as the Clean Power Plan, which has some good merits, but then has problems on the core issue that is still relying on fossil fuels. Until we change that, until you transition totally from fossil fuels to clean energy, there is nothing that else can happen. It is clear from the present situation with pollution or the long situation regarding climate change, we must transition immediately 100% renewable from fossil fuels to clean energy. That's it. It's just the same way where if my doctor tells me, he says, Rev, you gotta stop eating salt or you're gonna have a stroke, I can't go out and get a Big Mac with extra salt on it with French fries, think it's gonna be okay, and do a cap and trade, or give my son an apple juice and a salad, and think it's gonna be all right. That's not how this works. How it works is that we keep digging out the ground, and we keep polluting, and keep putting power plants, which are majority around people of color. 68% of people of color live 30 miles within a clean power plant. So because of that, it affects people of color in enormous ways. So with that, climate leadership needs to change. What that means that even EPA, one of the situations that came with EPA running Flint, was how they moved slow, even more so around fracking. It is amazing to me how this administration, just what with this presidency, does that do with fracking, which is causing earthquakes in Oklahoma and in Texas and throughout this country, but it's actually polluting water in that process, and so it's amazing to me that they won't deal with that. But that's part of the climate leadership problem that we as a movement have. We're just so happy to have anybody stand there and say, I'm with climate change, and this is what my position is, even though they can be with fracking and still be with cap and trade and still with fossil fuels, it causes a problem. So we first must deal with that. Now, in dealing with that, let me just bring it home to my community. One of the situations is Representative Keith Ellison wrote a letter based upon our push of our caucus that the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, must divest from fossil fuels. It is ridiculous that the Congressional Black Caucus would be the conscience of this Congress, where I'm sitting right now on 4/20/2016, is still taking money from the fossil fuel companies, even though it hurts our community. That is a shameful act. And anybody who is in the Congressional Black Caucus who still takes money, they should just listen. Quit your job, go back to what you used to do, and give that seat to somebody who needs to be there for our people, because this needs to change now. And so with that process, Keith Ellison wrote a letter asking for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation to divest in December. And as of now, they have not moved yet. We will be then writing our letter at the 6-month mark to remind them of this letter in a very diplomatic, very professional way. And then hopefully by that time that does not continue on. We will be, one, going with Kimon to the Black Love Festival around the corner, but we will also be making and ensuring that they know at CBC that you do not divest, that you will be in our foresight. You will be the ones that we will be coming for and demanding that you divest from fossil fuels. We've already told it to you, we've explained it. This is our lunchtime moment. You have to stop this. If you don't stop this, then we can't tell nobody else to stop this. And so this is where we are. So that's the first issue, climate leadership. Second issue is on climate justice. Our environmental movement operates in a very siloed fashion, and that must stop. There are many resources. The environmental movement in general spends close to $1 billion a year in advocacy, almost $1 billion. The top 5 organizations in the environmental movement, all of them make over $100 million a year. And then there are many smaller ones that go down to 50 million, 40 million, 20 million. These are their annual budgets. Most of their boards are all white. Most of their staff is all white. Most of their processes are all white. No culture engagement. While they then go out here and just pay lip service and give very minuscule dollars to other organizations, in sometimes a very user-toy fashion, doing photo ops and putting up black folks, or creating other organizations and giving them a few dollars to then kind of be the kind of color movement, so to speak. And while they're not really empowering communities of color, not really having in solidarity with resources, this must change immediately. If we're truly all in this together, then there comes a time when we truly must be all in this together. And so we must share the resources. I understand how this became a very wealthy movement. I get it. I'm not just upset about that. There's been some amazing wins since the Clean Air Act. There have been some amazing wins up until Keystone XL Pipeline, which was the beginning of a frontline leading movement. But at this time, we must now figure out a way to diversify our own movement. How can we ask folks to change their way and transition if we would act transition ourselves? How can we ask people to change their lifestyles? If we're the movement, are asking to change their life. We can't do it ourselves. So the Roundtable must come clear. They must get serious about climate justice. They must get serious about definitely equaling out the playing field of resources in this process. And then finally, let me just say this regarding culture, and then I'm done.
That happens to me all the time.
That's it?
That happens to me all the time. Brain.
Oh, no, I know brain. I'm getting ready. I need to make sure I say what I say correctly. I don't want to, I know, but to make sure I say it. It's no brain freeze at all. It's that when you recognize that you live in a country that sometimes show that they don't care about you. Diplomacy, legislation, litigation can only go so far. The fact that we have a Black Lives Matter movement, which can go beyond this police brutality and police reform to every area of dealing with this process. The fact that we have a black president, that we still have black colleges that are losing money, and that we have still black children who are drinking bad water, it causes for you to pause. You got to pause sometimes when you get to that moment, because if you yourself have to realize as an activist, is this worth it? It's what and I'm not doing this. I'm not saying this because it's for me. I'm saying this because my people are dying. And when you come to that moment, you got to really think from a strategic standpoint, how can I fix this? What can we do as a people? Black, white, brown, yellow, male, female, straight, gay, human. How can we fix this? And so you got to pause when you see your own movement still operating in a very siloed fashion, a very selfish fashion, a very self-centered fashion. A movement built not on love, not on caring. A movement that will come out in a true discuss awakening, which is phenomenal, but still not concerned about Southeast, not doing things to even awaken folk around them in the communities so that we can grow. There's something that caused you to pause. So you're right, I had to pause for that moment. But now that I've collected my moment, let me just finish my thought here. Simply that where we are right now, 16 years into the 21st century, truly is our last moment to get this right. The difference between the 20th century is that if they had failed, yes, we would have different hotels, yes, we would have different schools, yes, we would have different water fountains, different baseball leagues, and some of that may or may not be all what it needs to be. But if we fail now, we fail in reality, we don't have existence. And so I'm not speaking about us in 2016, I'm speaking about 2116. My son's grandchildren, my son's son's grandchildren, his child, my son's daughter, who he will have, my son's daughter, I'm fighting for that. I'm fighting because of the reality that we have a fossil fuel industry that is so ingrained with money in politics that we have to do everything we can to truly have this a political revolution, but a revolution to transition ourselves.
Humanity.
That is where we are. And I have to pause because can our movement do that? Can we get beyond being institutionalized, being so caught up with our own institutions? Can we be in a moment where we can move beyond even the labels of PDA or hip-hop populist or whatever and fight for the next generation? Or do we fail? Or do we fail in our moment to be so just about what we got to say?
If we fail, extinction is the result.
That is the result.
Extinction.
So this is no game.
Has anybody done any work on the Permian extinction?
So Mark, going to work on the, say it again?
The Permian extinction, the results are mirroring what we're doing as far as the
So let me
gases,
actually,
exchange, the atmosphere and everything.
Let me say
We're
this.
doing kind of the same thing that Siberian's traps did.
Yeah.
Because we're 500 volcanoes going off all at once for.
But let me speak to that, because I think that there's a level here. So one of the things that we use is culture. And one of the things I've noticed in the progressive movement is that so I'm the president of Hip Hop Caucus. I have to work with all kinds of amazing people who are in the academy and people who are not. People in the suites, people in the streets. Academy, avenue. I can do all of them. I love it. In about 5 minutes, it's 4:20. Half my caucus is lighting up.
Wait a minute, we can't light up in
That's the reality.
I'll take the arrest, I don't care.
Hey, but the reality though is that what we have to do is that we sometimes want folks to meet us and not meet them. If we discuss extinction, we discuss how much carbon parts per million are in the atmosphere. What's the chemical content, what's more, worse, lead or chloroform. We discuss fracking or the difference between fracking and mountain removal and whatever else. We can get enamored in that process. What I'm talking about is how do we touch people so they feel the urgency of the moment wherever they are. So that if we do that, I actually believe in the power of the people that we can stem the tide of anything. But that's our trick that we gotta figure out.
Here's what you do.
Here's what we do.
Yeah, but I mean, you're asking a question.
No, I know, I'm saying this is what we have to do.
Right, but I think that the answer is, look at where we've come as a species. 100,000 years ago, we didn't know how to control fire. We domesticated fire. 10,000 years ago, between 10 and 15,000 years ago, we domesticated crops on a wholesale scale because we all worked together. Almost 100 years ago, we learned how to split the atom. And almost 50 years ago, we put men on the moon.
Let me ask you a question.
We can do anything
Let me ask you a question.
if we all work together.
If this building was on fire, you went to the restroom, you saw the fires raging, and we were all inside here, would you come in here and say what you just said, or what would you say?
I'd deal with the fire.
But what would you say? You came in, if you knew that we were in this room, you went out of the restroom, man, it is
Pull
raging,
the fire alarm, run back in and deal with it.
and what would you tell us?
The building's on fire.
If I had time,
Get
if
out.
I had time, I would come in and say, walk to the exits, the house is on fire. If I didn't have time, I'd yank the thing, grab the nearest thing, go back in there and, okay, all right, context,
No, in that
sorry.
statement, you would be dealing
I'm
with
exhausted.
how fire was
I'd come
started
in
and
here
how we
and
rubbed rocks
say,
together.
everybody grab an extinguisher, we need to deal with this.
You would be like, let's get that out of here.
No.
The building is on fire.
Okay, yeah, context, planet, we
But this-
ain't going nowhere.
But this is my whole point. The reason I'm saying that is that simple communication is that's what we're missing with
Yeah.
just the world is on fire.
Right.
And we have to have the same, not just, we need to come in there and say, listen, the world is on fire and the petrol station continues to put gas on the fire.
Yeah.
And so we need to either fix this and we gotta fix it now. And we gotta do everything we can to make it happen.
Time is the fire in which we burn,
And there's nowhere else to go.
and there ain't nowhere else to go.
No planet B.
I spent most
Now they got
of my life-
SpaceX, now Elon Musk is trying to get there. That's the sign.
Take about 2 million a day,
We're in shit.
no
Let me do one quick commercial, I know we got time, let me do a commercial. Thank you very much for having me. Let me say this, we are actually using culture. We are very fortunate that tomorrow, if you go to People's Climate Music, please go there. peoplesclimatemusic.com. This is one of the key ways. We actually working with we're yelling fire, and we're getting a lot of their folks who have platforms, who are artists. So we have Common, who is an Academy Award winner, Grammy Award winning artist from the South Side of Chicago, who is actually releasing a video. It will be on Facebook exclusive. And then the video that they did, him and Leakes and others, will be released on Earth Day. It's a very different type of climate video. It's something that you should spread wide and far, because it looks, if you've seen Beyonce's Formation, this looks just like that. So how this was done, we just finished this one, we finished this point. So how that was done, that was the first. The second thing that I think that's important for you to do after you go to People Got Music, the second thing I think it's important for us to do is that HR 540.
Okay,
Okay.
in the letter.
Phenomenal, thank you. So HR 540.
HRES.
HRES, thank you. HRES 540. And I think because we know that demonstration without legislation leads to frustration. And so that is important. There are still 2 members of the Progressive Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus and Hispanic Caucus who have not signed on to that. That's wrong. We start there. We need to hound our own people so they can be a part of that legislation. It's groundbreaking, it's important, and it's a stepping stone. Now I think you're a different question.
In getting the message out to different cultures, okay, because we've got a lot of different cultures, and our strengths, one of our biggest strengths. But most people, when they're working all day and everything, and they go home, and they don't want to pay attention to politics, they don't want to hear all this about what's going on with the planet and everything. What they want to do is see Kim Kardashian's ass. They want to see Honey Boo Boo. They want mindless entertainment. I looked at the data. You know, the most popular shows were these. Oh my God, really? And that's one of the things that I've been trying to work on, is giving the message in a way that they will want to see it, like a reality show. You know what I'm saying? Kind of.
So I'm going to go back to one of my points. I mean, when I'm taking a point of climate justice. Again, each year on advocacy, not on zoos, schools, advocacy spends $1 billion a year. Last I checked, somewhere within $1 billion is enough to create the cultural content that needs to be created. So before I go out here and begin to critique whoever's out there, and I have, for instance, the Black Love Festival, which should be the greenest, most powerful festival that we can invest in. Until that happens, I don't really want to hear about the easy. This is not an easy conversation. I don't want to have the elementary conversation about, okay, well, this is what happens on, you know, with Kim Kardashian. I want to deal with us. You know, it's my whole conversation from climate leadership to climate justice to legislation to what we're doing is about, to CBC, to that, it's about us. I didn't say we go march on Chevron. I mentioned Chevron. I didn't mention that we talk about Shell or BP, which is the culprits. I mentioned us. Because if we get us together, then we're going to have the change. See, that's the thing I think the progressive that we do so often. We go looking for the enemy and not looking at us. Let's fix us. This is, if we fix us in this room and figure out how we grow our movement, how we truly do that and begin to break the silos down, then we will be effective. That's the difference. But I'm telling you, we as progressives quickly go into, wow, look what the Koch brothers are doing. And they doing wrong. Look what Shell doing. Look at they doing wrong. Yeah. But what can we do when we have $1 billion a year to fight this? Let us relook at how we're spending. I know we've been doing that way for years, but let's look at how we're building our movements. Look at how we're doing our culture. Look at how we're organizing and mobilizing. Look at how we're using social media. Let's look at this with the urgency that the House and the building and the earth is on fire. And again, all I can do for me, to be honest, is no offense to the unity component, is that when I keep seeing black people drowning in major cities, I am going to speak out about that. So I want the kumbaya moment, but I also want the fact that when I continue to see that people are with rashes and drinking bad water and having bad air in Detroit, the American refinery, or dying in Long Island, or dying this week in Houston, or dying wherever, and they predominantly people of color, this ain't 2116, in 2016, then I'm gonna keep speaking out. That's what I'm talking about. So I don't even need to be honest, I hope the movement comes along. But if they don't come along, Hip Hop Caucus is going to keep fighting for our people regardless. I don't need nobody to come along for this ride. I'm just letting y'all know that we're going to fight for people because a lot of my grandma's dying, my children are dying, and we have no future. This is not a game. I'm not playing cutesy, progressive, liberal politics. I'm playing survival, life or death for my people. And as long as that's the case, I'm going to keep fighting for them. No offense, not trying to be disrespectful to nobody. But when my people are dying, I was a black man or a black woman or a white man or a white man who's in that spot, I'm fighting for my people. And it's no longer about being chemicals or scientific or whatever. I need my people to simply have clean air and clean water. That's it. No excuses. That's it. Anything else is a non-starter. Thank you for having me.
All right, simple message, Lewis. We have another.
How do I finish after him?
I know. I wanted to put my Earth Day people and environment together. It is of the earth, and you reference the smoke out.
Especially young black youth.
Right.
If you're a young black guy and a young white guy walking down the street, you got a real good chance the black kid's gonna get it, not the white kid.
Right.
And I know because I was there.
And I have some that got caught up in that.
Yes.
So yes. Let me just give a statistic very quickly. African Americans account for 13% of cannabis use. However, they represent 80% of arrests based on cannabis. Lewis, you're up.
Yeah. Where do I start? Law enforcement, the prohibition of marijuana was predicated on a lie. The word marijuana was created to make it sound more Latino, so it would scare white people. That's what it comes down to. It's amazing. I mean, we've got this gigantic PDA and all this, legislative action and all this criminal justice action predicated on a stupid lie. A racist, stupid lie. That's it. That's what it comes down to. You spend billions of dollars a year. We lock up 700,000 arrests a year for pot. And 80 to 85% of those people are young black males. I mean, there's nothing else to say. What the hell are we doing? Are we insane? I mean, I've gone into Chuck Grassley's office. I've gone into some of these offices. They don't get it, or they do not care. And a friend of mine, just Benesch got popped. I want to just run out there and just scream and talk my lungs sometimes. But here's the thing. The sociological damage that we have done in the last 100 years to this nation is just what he was talking about. Culture. We're being divided up and slaughtered off by a few really smart, really rich people. That's what it comes down to. The private prison lobby, I've seen the GO group guys in the halls, and they're making money locking people up. I had a meeting with Chuck Grassley's staff, and they're waiting on evidence, they're waiting on research. I was like, man, pick up your phone. I can get you 9 medically, published sites that show it. We have patents. The U.S. government has patents. And if you look at the patents, they're for every illness that we've got. from cancer to crabs. You know, from PTSD to schizophrenia. From corns on your feet to skin cancer. The economic cost of the drug war and destroying people's lives and throwing them in prison, and then they get out of prison, they can't get a job, they can't get a loan because of the cons, and their whole family's destroyed. Okay? I mean, but we can stop it. But we all, like he said, we all have to get together. We have to focus. It's got to be, you know, the tip of the spear doesn't do anything without the spear. And the thing about the Congress is the spear's got to hit everywhere. And it's a big battle, but I think we can win it by the end of the year. Either the CARES Act or Bernie Sanders' bill. I made 500 copies of that and put them in all the offices. The simplest solution is the easiest one to find, and it doesn't take a lot of brain power. And so far, I haven't heard back from anybody up here about Bernie's bill. I haven't gotten one co-sponsor, and we did a House with the Senate. But so it's down to our elected officials, and we have to change them. We have to change Congress like a diaper, because eventually it's going to stink, and you need to get that stuff out of there. The baby will die. That's basically us, our species. Sorry, I'm really tired. I haven't slept in like a few weeks.
Right.
There are no other co-sponsors on that bill, right?
Right.
Not
no.
that I've heard of. I went on the House side and on the Senate side. I was like, look, we need co-sponsors. We need to get it, ram it down Chuck Grassley's throat and get it from McConnell's office as quickly as possible, and then get it on the floor for a vote and then hand it off to the House.
Is Bernie's bill legalization or decriminalization?
Total removal.
Just legalization?
Yeah. And marijuana prohibition in 2016.
I would expect nothing less from him.
Right, right.
It's 6 pages. Actually, it's 5 pages and one line on the 6 pages. Simple.
And basically, really, what we as an organization are really looking at when we look at the whole issue of ending marijuana prohibition is not only ending the prohibition, but ending the incarceration of people who were incarcerated for possession and expunging their records, because as well, not a lot of people know, which is really a problem, before the ascent, if you will, of the pharmaceutical industrial complex, as you said, virtually every disease was treated with some form of cannabis.
Right.
Can I ask you a question? Because I'm just curious, how many people, starting at the District of Columbia, are in jail or prison for marijuana possession?
In the district?
Well, I don't mean that they're physically in the district.
Well, there's
They're
700,000
convicted of a crime.
arrests nationally.
I
But
understand.
those aren't in jail. So
But how many of folks would you say, are presently in jail for marijuana possession?
5 million?
No.
No, 3.
What percentage?
Sorry, I've got a lot of
No, 5
data.
million, 5 million.
Okay,
It was either 3 or 5 million.
24% of all people incarcerated at the moment are for nonviolent drug offenses.
Yeah.
well, no, I
So
know
it's-
that, I'm talking about marijuana.
Marijuana itself is like probably 2/3 of that.
So have you tried to, push President Obama to use his
Yeah.
pardon authority?
I've
to
been calling
pardon
him incessantly for 2 years.
Well, what can we do specifically to get that?
White House.
Give
Did
felons
block my
their,
number,
give
right?
felons
Yeah.
their voting rights back.
No, it's
Well,
not.
that's a whole issue, other.
But I'm just saying,
which
why
we're
would you
very-
do something, why would you use one of your largest political moves on a community that can't vote?
Well, here's one good piece of news. I think maybe the White House did send me a petition for the DEA to deschedule cannabis.
Okay.
I don't know where that's going. I just got it this morning. But did you see what we did with the 51-foot joint outside the front of the White House? Did you see the, well, the news didn't cover it, but I mean, all the smaller internet news agencies covered it. We all smoked at 420, we all lit up.
I heard about it.
I mean, I'm walking up to Secret Service tactical guys with all their crap on and everything going, you look like you need this more than me. Would you like to smoke with me or arrest me, one or the other? And they were like, no. But the White House, I think he gets it now, because we were in his face. We were basically in his face. I mean, he left for the trip like halfway through our protest. You know, the motorcade went out when a buddy of mine was coming. He was like, oh yeah, they called Bud. I was like, I thought he might have come and smoke with us. But he was on his way to, I can't remember where he's going. So the pressure is huge. I mean, I go up in some of these, I mean, I've been in almost every office in the Hill, you know, bitching and moaning about this thing. And I don't go in as a lobbyist. I put my resume out, but I was like, wait, I can't work for a lobby firm. I'm an American citizen. When I walk in a congressional office, I'm the boss. I'm 1/300 millionth boss of this room. You know, I own that much of that desk right there. And I carry that attitude with me. And I go, you know, the staff will know me. They'll, most of them like me, if you don't. But I tell them, I said, look, tell your boss to do his job. It doesn't take a lot of brain power to end the prohibition of marijuana. And look at Portugal. My God, all you got to do is look at one sheet of paper. Portugal legalized everything, took it out of criminal justice, put it in healthcare. All the stats are right there. There's no more crime. I mean, it's like all the bad stuff went down, all the good stuff went up. And a kindergartner could legislate, you know, a better law than they have here.
How many people in here saw where to invade next? Uncle Moore's does
Oh
something
God, I
on
love
Portugal.
that. I've been trying to get him to call me back for months, and like, you don't even know. But yeah, I mean, you know, all these problems, the climate change, everything, these are all simple third grade problems to solve. I mean, I could go to any third grader in any part of the city right now within 20 minutes walk and go, how would you fix this? And they'd give me a list, you know, and then jump back on their bike and ride down the road. Solved.
Right.
The money in politics, Citizens United comes back to that. The people, and I was born among the 1% of the 1%. Okay, I'm a Drexel. I'm related to some of these people. I use that word loosely. They don't get it. And we need to get them to get it. Because they're in our way. And they're spending a lot of money with Walton. Walton's kids, you know, the little 5 Waltons, you know, people like that do not understand. They don't get it, and we need to make it get it somehow. Bernie's doing a good job. But we have a year. I think we can get it all on the table in a year and get most of the legislation that we need done in a year. But we need that $1 billion, we need a couple more. You know, we need to get the activists up here camped out on that, like Democracy Spring, but with, you know.
We are going to do something, we are going to have the cannabis in our May letter. So that will be part of what we do in May, wrap it around cannabis, and we're going to wrap it around jobs.
Yeah.
So it's going to be about labor and cannabis, you know,
Industry.
all American industry.
The industry alone, interstate commerce alone would be $1 trillion industry.
Right.
And I'm being very conservative with the number.
Right, but again, we are going up against
International,
big
forget
pharma. We're going up against
We can
big
make
pharma.
hempcrete,
Yes.
we can make mental medicines, physical medicines, we can make oil with it, we can run diesel engines, we can run gas engines, we can run, oh my God, I mean, if you have an hour, I can tell you a couple of things that we can do with the cannabis plant, hemp and marijuana.
Well,
Just a couple of
let's
things.
you and I talk as we begin working with other people on this campaign, because that is a good part of what we want to do. We do want to turn this into a campaign because we know a lot of our members would really be very interested in this.
Yes, and a lot of them probably smoke, because I kid you not, the Cannon building, I've walked in there a couple of times and smelled some really good stuff coming through the walls. So some of them get it. I'm not mentioning any names, but I think that I know a couple of them. for
All
sure.
right, yeah.
I'm not saying
All right.
anything else.
All right, we got a new and unexpected speaker, so Louis, thank you. Louis brought a guest. His name is John Harris III. Since Valencia couldn't be with us, John, I'd like you to just begin a little bit about solitary confinement of the mentally ill, because John said he'd be comfortable speaking about that a little bit. Get us started.
Okay. And my name is John Harris III. I'm the founder of an organization named Authentic Reflection. We actually launched on 4/20/2011, so this is the 5-year anniversary of the launch.
Congratulations.
I appreciate
5
that.
years is a long time for the organization,
It
yes.
says when that's about when it starts to function in the world, kind of like when you first start going to kindergarten. So, so I find myself in spaces where I have to walk a little more, talk a little more, use the language a little more. But I study psychology and community development in undergrad. And so facing the question of solitary confinement of the mentally ill is almost like what came first, chicken or egg in a lot of ways. So I go to this men's shelter during the day. It's not a men's shelter, it's a church, actually. You're not allowed to sleep there, so it's not a shelter, right? And so something we address is the sickness, I say, of homelessness, but that also ties into what I say is this pyramid, right? There's this pyramid. It goes from, there's drugs, and there's jail, and there's the military, right? And freedom's probably like that before, somewhere around there. And so, in regards to solitary confinement of the mentally ill, a lot of times, your options, if you find yourself in a position of poverty, where there tends to be a increased diagnosis of mental illness or throwing people into special education programs, things of that sort. Because there is a direct tie into the effects that poverty has on a person's mental health and their ability to function in the traditional system. So a lot of times these people may end up in jail, right? Or other people who don't agree with the political structure or system, once they're in jail, they'll find themselves in solitary confinement because they're an isolated incident. The reason they're in jail is an isolated incident because they're targeted for an isolated purpose. So then they become isolated. Plenty of political prisoners from the past, present, and possibly in the future. Some cases gain public recognition, some do not. Some people just disappear and they're gone for about 20, 30 years. You never hear from them. And other people, they become a rallying call. But I say that to say when I was going through a particular type of training, Louis brought it, there are labels such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or things of this sort.
You've got a therapist in the room.
Right. Then they use these labels for the purpose of monetizing defined mental illnesses. And so people will be sent into where it is that they fit on the little pyramid, right? You have the people in the drugs, you have people in the jails, you have people in the military. You have people who get to be free, right? The people who get to be free get to look at other three sides of the pyramid, right? Those are the people who they decide to not label with a particular mental disorder, such as a schizophrenia. If your mind's a little too off and you can't be controlled as well, you might want to go see a particular doctor who can give you a pill that could possibly give you something you didn't have until you met the doctor, right? So it creates like this cycle in mental illnesses. We like to perform. My case manager at the Father McKenna Center, his name is Cortez McDaniel, talks about how homelessness is actually more so of a sickness than it is an economic issue, right? Because in the United States of America, we have about 6 empty homes for every homeless person, right? So it's not an economic issue. It's definitely a social issue. We have the highest GDP in the world. We come up with that, people listen to it, and so on and so forth. So mental illness and solitary confinement, especially solitary confinement, is a tool used to separate an individual for a population in order to coerce them in a way that they probably can control them in a way that is not possible given a general population. So that's when it goes back to the chicken or the egg. You isolate someone from the general population. Were they sick before they got isolated, or did they become sick after they were isolated? Same thing goes with a lot of other mental illnesses. If a person's born up in poverty and uses a lot of distractions when he goes into the classroom, was the kid mentally ill because of what happened, or was he mentally ill because of the way that you treat him because of his circumstances? And these things start to happen to kids at around 1st, 3rd grade, right? So you tell a kid that's in 1st grade that if he has special needs, he's labeling some type of mental illness. So this is his impression of school. So he's already been put on a certain type of track. By about 3rd or 4th grade, they know pretty much exactly where he's going to be or where he's going to end up. So then he gets labeled mentally ill. He gets one of his choices: drugs, jail, military. And picks. The people who end up in solitary confinement are typically the people who end up on the jail part of the pyramid. They're not on the freedom side of the pyramid. They're not on the drug paying part of the pyramid or the military part, which helps to keep all of the other things working properly, even the thing for the free people who get to look at the other parts of the pyramid. So that's the way that I view solitary confinement. I think that it's a tool. I've dealt with the different episodes of isolation for whatever it is that I was working on. It depends on who you ask and when you ask them. I was working, and people noticed that I was working, whether they agree with it or they didn't agree with it. I'm no longer isolated, but I can attest to the effects that isolation can have, solitary confinement can have on your mental health. It takes time to transition back into the general population. You start to become a lot more sensitive, sensory aware. Those things can be both gifts and curses. The things that you go through struggles are things that you allow them to define you, and you will be defined by the oppression of that struggle. If you decide to define your oppressive situation, then you will become a story or success out of such an oppressive situation. That is what some of the political prisoners in the past have done, from Nelson Mandela to Assata Shakur, and I really respect all the work that they have done up until this point as it relates to progressive values moving forward our society. But that's all that I have right now, unless anyone has any questions.
Well, I'm going to thank you for that, John. That was very, very interesting. It was a very good perspective. I know that for PDAction, we've supported political prisoner Don Siegelman, and we know that last year he went through several periods of solitary confinement. And again, for him, it was because he is A, a very high-profile prisoner, and B, he's a jailhouse lawyer. So again, a person who has the ability to put ideas in the minds and influence a general population. And periodically, there is a desire to quiet that voice. The other concern that, as an organization, we have about solitary confinement of people who are mentally ill is the UN has officially classified solitary confinement as torture. And if we are dealing with a person that is genuinely, truly mentally ill, to put them in an environment of solitary confinement is really making a situation that is bad significantly worse. President Obama recently signed an executive order banning solitary confinement of the mentally ill. As yet, the Bureau of Prisons has not chosen to implement that order. So we are looking at what is going on in the Bureau of Prisons and what is their plan to implement a presidential executive order.
That goes back to the private prison industry, because they have a lot of influence in the public prison industry too.
Right.
Bigger budget than the public prisons.
Right.
So
Right, well, we thank you. I want to thank all my guests. We started late, I know, with the live stream. We did manage to record the entire round table. So there's going to be some interesting technical work that we may find ourselves trying to do where we put the early pieces of the round table where Representative Pocan joined us with the stream and the professional video. We love all of our cell phone cameras, so thank you, Carissa, for saying we can film this ourselves, so we had activist filmography here. But again, that's what makes the round table a very, very real kind of thing. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We will be back next month. I believe our date will be May 18th, and we will be talking about, as I said, the wonderful combination of jobs and cannabis. So until then, happy Earth Day. So I hope everybody has a marvelous Earth Day celebration. I want to congratulate the City of Washington, D.C. on their Emancipation Day, and congratulations and have a lovely time with the Great Smokeout.
Happy 420.
Right, yes, yes, thank you.